Alright, this is John Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you. So one of the things that happens maybe every week or every twice a week in your neighborhood is that they may be picking up the garbage, right? So they might have a trash can like this, you put your garbage in, right? And they take your garbage and cart it away. Where does it go when it goes away, right? It goes to the landfill, right? They're filling up land with all kinds of just people's trash and garbage. It just gets buried over. And in my mind, that's an incredible waste of resources. You know, I think a much better alternative for, generating waste is number one, recycling. And, so many localities may provide recycling bins or, big recycling totes. And besides just the things that could be recycled, like the cardboard, the plastic, the glass, the cans, all this kind of stuff, even some municipalities these days actually even recycle electronics. Another thing that's missing from many municipalities, although they've gotten on the recycling bandwagon with plastics and cardboard and paper and metal and stuff, they're not using the green waste. So what we're going to do today is actually show you this guy, which kind of looks like a standard garbage can, but it's not. And I encourage everybody that is currently throwing away their food scraps and yard waste clippings and grass clippings and all this kind of stuff, to don't do that any further, because even better than recycling and sending things off-site, I mean, when you take something and recycle it off-site, where does that end up? Does it end up in China to get recycled? I mean, it travels on barges and ships across the world to finally get recycled, if it even does at all. A much better use and way to do things, in my opinion, is to reuse instead of recycle. Now, when you're making your own compost at home, you're reusing, which is much better than even recycling. So what we're going to do today is use this guy right here, which is not a trash can. This is actually made by Toter, and this is actually a self-contained composting unit, a continuous feed composting unit, so it's quite special. So what we're going to do in this episode today is share with you guys what this is, how useful it can be for you guys, and how specifically to set it up, because it's empty and I got a lot of compost this time of year. So now we're in my compost alley in the backyard. As you guys can see, I got a bunch of composters here. This is the first baby I started with. I mean, this thing's like 50 bucks. What it is, it's basically a piece of plastic with 4 sides, and it's got the sides and then the one top, and then it's open on the bottom. And you're supposed to fill this stuff up with the food scraps and yard clippings, and it's supposed to compost. So a few things happened to this thing. Number one, like the hinges broke. As you guys can see, it's like falling apart over on this end here. I kept piling stuff in, and it wasn't really composting. The problem that occurred was that this lost moisture very rapidly. Depending on your climate, it's actually very arid here and dry, and even if there's just moisture lying out, it gets evaporated off just because of the climate here. Now, some other locations might not have this issue. You might be more humid where you're at, but that's a specific issue I've had. Also tried a standard pile, just setting down on the ground, and that doesn't work so well either. You gotta, composting needs a few things to work properly. Number one, you need your greens, like the food scraps, grass, things like that. Yard waste, you need the carbons. It's your browns, like the leaves, like wood chips, like sawdust, like paper and cardboard. Another thing you need is the oxygen, so you need good aeration, and you need the right moisture content or the right amount of water. So the challenge that I had in the past was with the water, and the bins that I used would just dry out. So then I went to something like this behind me. This is a drawer form compost tumbler, and that's what's called a batch composter. So you put everything in there, and you just basically spin it once a day. It composts down. Maybe about a month or so, maybe a little bit less, you have some finished compost. And all these bins have their pros and cons. My least favorite kind of composter is this kind right here. They seem to be very cheap, probably cost nothing for the companies to make. And while they're a good idea, it just doesn't work super effectively. So what we're going to do is show you guys next the Toter composter, which is a whole new revolution in composters. I mean, it's a composter with wheels. It can be moved around to where you have your yard waste to put in there. You could actually then move it around, put it in the sun if you need it a little bit warmer. You could also move it around to where you need the compost when you're going to be emptying it out. So this is a very smart system. Plus it's fully contained, so you're not going to get the problems with rodents, with bugs. And because it is contained, it's going to retain the moisture in there, so you're not going to have to continually water it, provided you add some food scraps that have a high moisture content. Now if you're adding other things that don't have a high moisture content, you may need to add some water in there. So next, let me go ahead and show you guys the toter composter that I'm setting up today, and then we'll get into setting it up. Alright, so what we're looking at next is the toter composter. Yes, Toter is the same company that probably makes your big, large garbage collection cans outside, if your city provides them for you. If they don't provide them, then I definitely would recommend some Toter products, because these guys have been made for many years and engineered, and they use the proper kind of plastic so that it will not degrade in the sun. A problem with many inexpensive garbage cans is that they'll degrade with the UV light, they'll get holes in the bottom, and you'll have to replace them sooner than later. I always encourage you guys to buy good, well-made products. This is also an American-made product. It is made using 50% recycled plastic, as well as UV sterilized, and also BPA free to boot. So I like that a lot. It's also on wheels, and actually has a nice wood grain finish, so it's gonna look pretty nice instead of like a garbage can. It'll look kind of like something decorative, and people might think it's a garbage can, but little do they know this is a composting facility in a can. Super ingenious. So the first thing is they got a little latch here. So this latch is cool because of critters, bears. If you got bears living near you, raccoons, rats, whatever animals, they can't get into this to eat your food scraps. So I think that is very important. That's another reason why I like the compost tumblers, because they are enclosed, keeps the pests, the animals out of your stuff, so that you can make your own compost. Plus they're not going to leave a mess, and you're not going to attract them. This can be very important in a city or suburban atmosphere, where you got neighbors and you don't want to have any kind of pest problems that you're the cause of. So we're going to go ahead and unlatch this, and inside here, let me go ahead and show you guys that. We got a few things. Check it out. They think of everything at Toter. They give you a little plastic can that you can use to catch your food wastes inside your house. So you're gonna put your food scraps in here, bring it out, and dump it in. In addition, on this Toter here, you'll see on the top there, when you open the lid, if you don't know how to compost, no fret. They have a very simple instructions on exactly how to compost, and it's very simple. The composting ratio is 2:1. Now this is your standard ratio. You could dial it in further, but this is just for the neophyte, so you can have successful results. If you're one of those geeky dudes, you could look into the ratios exactly and calculate every bucket full of stuff you put in there to get it exactly right. But you know what? If it works, I'm good with that. And it says composting ratio, 2 bins of these guys of either dry leaves, pine needles, straw, wood shavings, and sawdust. I would also add on there things like shredded paper and cardboard. And then 1 times of food, vegetable, and eggs, coffee grounds and filters, leafy plant trimmings, and grass clippings. One of the sayings I used to remember, gas, glass, or ass, nobody rides for free. Wait, I think I got it wrong. Anyways, that's another story. But yeah, then they just basically tell you how to set this up and compost with your Toter bin. Now one of the cool features in here, I know when you get this you're going to want to do this, they have this little spinner. I like spinners, man. Now, you do not want to use this spinner to turn your compost to aerate it or anything like that. The only reason why the spinner is on here actually is to, when your compost is ready and done, you're going to spin this and it's going to harvest your compost. What we're going to do next is actually give you guys a few close-up shots of how this works, and I'm going to explain it more thoroughly for you guys so you can understand the whole process, because this is unlike any standard compost bin you've seen before, and unlike anything I've seen before. So I'm excited to actually start using it to see how well it's going to work compared to my standard tumblers. Now we're going to go ahead and show you guys the different parts of the Toter compost bin. Number 1, they got that handle that I like so much. It's like to turn. If you got kids, they're going to love turning this thing. It's kind of like, when you got the TNT and it's like you're going to push it down to blow everything up. What this does is spins, and actually if you guys can see on the bottom, when you're spinning it, those brushes on the bottom, which look like kind of like brushes that you'd use if you got ice on your car in the winter time, but a little more heavy duty. it basically goes around and spins around and spins and basically spins the grates and basically will disturb the compost that's sitting on the bottom. And once everything's broken down, it's going to fit through this grate and then fall into the little bottom area. In the bottom area, then what you could do is you're going to go ahead to this bottom area, and they got a little trap door here. You're going to go ahead and open this little trap door right here, and all the finished compost is going to be sitting in there for you when it's done. So then you can actually scoop it out to where you need it. And oh look, we got a little friend there. That's definitely really cool. Otherwise, you just keep this shut so that no animals could get in there. I like the design because once again, this thing's on wheels. You could actually roll it around to where you need the compost, open it up, and then just dump it out. Furthermore, on the top here, what they do is they got a little like stack here. So in the middle, this works kind of like a chimney. You know, if you think of the chimney, the smoke comes out the chimney. Well, what's going to happen is air is going to rise up through the bottom of this little chimney here, and it's basically going to come out all these holes into the compost that you're making on the inside. So this is actually called a continual composter, because what's going to happen is you're going to put stuff on the bottom and you're just going to keep raising the level up and up, and the stuff's going to compost. As it composts, the good stuff's going to fall out the bottom, and the stuff on the top is just going to drop down. You can keep adding and adding to make more compost. Another thing that's really cool, this is a nice thick plastic. Once again, BPA free, so that's going to keep your compost warm on the inside, because compost does require some temperature to happen. So now I'm ready to load up my toter composter. And this is probably the most important thing to remember when setting up the toter composter or any composter, is you got to do it properly. This is especially important in a composter like this, where you're going to have to mix up the material putting in there, and it's not going to tumble around and mix itself. So the first thing you're going to need are some leaves. The leaves are going to act actually as a kind of a mat to ensure food scraps, unfinished, uncomposted food scraps, will not drop through the grate there. So we just got a 5-gallon bucket full. They say to use 2 of those small included container fulls of leaves. We're just going to use a nice 5-gallon bucket. And we're just going to distribute these guys evenly over the whole bottom. All right, that looks like all the bucket's empty. We got all the leaves in there. I'm gonna go ahead and push this stuff down in there, compact it just a little bit, pull out any fronds. They're gonna be harder to compost. So now that we got our browns in there, once again, the leaves, which are the carbon source, we want to add a nitrogen source. So the nitrogen source, in my case, is food scraps. So if we put 1 5-gallon bucket of leaves, you want to add a half a bucket of the food scraps. Unfortunately, I have a full bucket of food scraps right here, so we're going to go ahead and evenly distribute this around a little bit. Looks like we got about a nice layer in there. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to layer in more browns, because if we're adding 1 5-gallon bucket of food scraps, we actually need 2 buckets of browns. And we're putting in a little bit of time, so we don't like put the whole bucket in. We're putting a little bit so that everything could be sandwiched together nicely and get a nice mixture of the carbon and nitrogen. So what we have next are my favorite. We got the shredded cardboard with a little bit of shredded paper in there. We're gonna go ahead and sprinkle this stuff in there. Another nice little layer. And once again, what these guys are shredded cardboard and paper. Now, these aren't coming out of your standard shredder. This is coming out of a micro shredder. So be sure to check my episode, actually the last episode actually, which was on best carbon source. If you do live in an urban environment or big city, can't get leaves all the time, this stuff's always available. Now that we got a layer of the browns, we got more greens. This time greens, more food scraps. A bunch of tomatoes that we're composting down, the bad parts that I've cut out. Once again, we're just sprinkling on a nice layer here. Not too thick a layer, just enough to cover. All right. Now that we got more greens in there, we need some more browns. Once again, more shredded paper. So literally all we're doing is we're just layering on browns, greens, browns, greens. All right, guess what's next? You don't have to be a rocket science. We need more greens. Once again, got a few more food scraps in the bottom here. So I do want to mention on the bottom of my bucket, I do have some compressed sawdust pellets, which are normally used as horse bedding. This is an excellent carbon source. Normally for like tumbling composters, when things will get mixed up, I'm hesitant to use that in the system like this because they may not fully expand, because they may not get mixed. So that's why I'm choosing to use the leaves and the shredded cardboard and paper this time. Although I will put these in to see how they do. All right, got it emptied out. Next, last bit of greens going in as well. On the bottom there is more of the compressed sawdust pellets and some shredded paper as well. I'm gonna go ahead and mix this stuff around here. Finally, put in a little bit more shredded paper on the top. All right, next, after adding our greens, we're gonna add something else that is very critical that I believe you should also add to your compost bin, no matter what method you're composting. And that's some actually active compost. So whether you get this out of your garden, whether you bought it, this is actually out of my compost that are sitting next door. You wanna add some fresh compost to your compost bin that you're going to be wanting to compost. What this does, this basically inoculates your compost bin with the composting bacteria that's going to help break down the food scraps and the yard clippings in there. So we're just going to go ahead and sprinkle this guy around. It'd probably be best to sprinkle this on after every load of stuff to get it fully mixed in there, because you know I'm not going to probably be opening this up and turning it all too often because I'm just kind of lazy like that. So the other thing you're going to want to add to your compost bin that many people actually don't know about and don't even recommend is this stuff right here. This stuff is called azomite, or it's a kind of rock dust. What the rock dust is for, it has, 70 plus different trace minerals. Now the trace minerals are not only going to feed the microbes that you just put in there with your old compost, but it's also going to pre-inoculate the compost you're making to be some of the richest, most nutrient-rich compost that you've ever made, because most gardeners might be putting NPK in their garden. That's 3 minerals, right? Putting 70 minerals back in my compost, the same compost that's going to fill up my raised bed so I could grow more food in it. So we're just going to go ahead and simply sprinkle this around a little bit. And you want to be careful when working with the rock dust. It's actually a fine particulate, so it's a bit moist today, so we don't have to wear a mask because you do not want to breathe this stuff in. Not too good. So we're just giving a nice gentle sprinkling. Optimally it might be best to, do a sprinkling of rock dust and compost after each and every layer, but I'm kind of lazy. We'll just put it in there, and eventually when I turn it, it'll get mixed up. After this, we're going to go ahead, put more greens in. What I have now are some greens, actually chopped up pepper stalks and leaves from the end of winter harvest. So we're just going to go ahead and shake this guy in there. Once again, we're going to not pile this in like one corner or the other, but we're going to try to evenly distribute it around the whole bin. Now that we got a nice layer on here, we're going to go ahead, once again, need more browns, man. And this is basically what you're doing. You're kind of creating like a lasagna, like, browns, greens, go brown. I got more browns. We're going to add some leaves this time. Man, we are literally filling this puppy up. Right, more greens once again. Now, one of the things actually I'm not adding to this mixture is water. You may want to add some water, whether you're using like a couple glasses of water. You want to get the nice, right moisture content. So, when you pick this stuff up, if you could squeeze it, it's going to be like a damp but not super sopping sponge. You want about that dampness. Luckily enough, this waste here is actually kind of wet because it actually rained, and plus my food scraps are also kind of moist as well. So hopefully we'll be pretty good with the level of moisture in there, and I'll add extra moisture if necessary. Next, we're going to layer in some more compost, some more rock dust. Now, besides putting the rock dust just in your composter so your compost will be pre-inoculated with the rock dust, you also want to add the rock dust to your standard vegetable garden, because it's really going to make your plants grow significantly better, taste better, be more nutritious, and be more bug and disease resistant. Be sure to check my other videos on the rock dust if you're not familiar with it, because most people don't really even know about it. Next, more browns. All right, so we got all our browns in there. It's, again, those leaves and whatnot. Now, I don't know about you, but when the trash company comes, I basically pay per load. So if you have one can, you can fill up your can to the max, including jumping on it, stomping it down so you can fit more in there to get your money's worth, especially if you have more trash than your bin can hold. Do not, I repeat, do not jump on this composter to smash everything down to fit in just a little bit more, because let me tell you, I got a lot more stuff to compost, but I ain't putting it in here right now, because if you smash everything down, it's going to basically compress it all, and there's not going to be the oxygen or the aeration in there needed for the bacteria and the microbes to flourish. So resist jumping on it, even though it looks like a garbage can and you want to get the most in. What I'm going to do now is, because it's about full, and we're not going to spin the handle once again, even though I'm tempted, we're going to go ahead and let this sit for 4 to 6 weeks and compost in it. So I might get in here with a fork or something and kind of fluff it up and turn a little bit to kind of get it mixed up a little bit better than it is. But hopefully it's just going to work as advertised. You know, it's a curious system with this continuous composting system. I'm really curious on how it works, and I think if it does work, it's going to be great, because literally just keep adding stuff on the top, keep harvesting out the bottom, and it'll be a continual flow, and it'll continue to work while you're generating more stuff. Unlike my batch systems over here, like my compost tumblers. I guess the last thing is we're going to go ahead and flip the lid up, lock this. It's all ready and loaded. Now it's just going to have to basically sit, and hopefully we'll come back and have some compost in just 4 to 6 weeks. Overall, so far so good. I like the Toter composter. I mean, it's definitely one heavy-duty composter. Oh, one of the things I didn't actually mention is that there's no assembly required. Some of the composters that you saw in the background earlier, you know, it took me an hour or two to assemble. With this, it comes out of the box and it's already all built, ready for you to start using right out of the box. So the last thing I want to say in this video is that I'm happy that Toter is now making compost bins. I mean, I like this design. Their engineers worked on this so that you can do it pretty much in a standard Toter bin. It blends in nicely, looks high class, and you're able to make continual compost, you know, in your home instead of sitting it off-site, where in most cases it's going to the landfill and it's rotting instead of composting. I always encourage you guys to recycle and reuse whenever possible. Once again, use your resources on your land, whether they're the food scraps, whether they're the garden clippings and lawn clippings, to make your own compost so you can enrich your garden. So if you're interested in buying one of these Toter compost tumblers, I think Amazon and Home Depot is currently selling it. And yes, it's a bit pricey, but for that you get a nice, durable, heavy-duty unit that's going to last you for many years to come and provide you with many, many, many cubic yards of compost. And let me tell you, some compost in the store can get quite expensive. So in the long run, you're doing the right thing for the earth, you're doing the right thing for the garden, and you're doing the right thing for nature. Alright, so we're back. It's probably been about, I don't know, 3 or 4 days since you saw me set the Toter composter up, and now we're going to go ahead and open it up to show you guys if it's really working or not. One of my favorite composting tools is a composting thermometer. Hey, check the video down below where I talk about the composting thermometer I got. I mean, this is the tool that you need to know if your compost is working, because your compost could be sitting there doing a lot of nothing. And, you know, I mean, you could stick your hand in and see if it's warm, but a compost thermometer is a proper tool, and I think mine was like, I don't know, less than 20 bucks, maybe even less than that. So let's go ahead and open up the Toter and show you guys the temperature on the inside to see if I got an active pile. Next, let's check out the Toter, open it up, check out the temperature. Before we do, I want to show you guys this here. One of the things I noticed on the Toter, I don't know if you could see that from a side profile, like this panel was all the way straight and actually kind of bulges out. I don't know if that's because it got hot, because it's composting or what, but I don't think it was like that before, because the sides are not, and just the front and the back are, which is a bit weird. First, let's actually check out the bottom. Open up the bottom here and see anything, if we got anything in the trapdoor that's coming out. All right, so check it out. This is the bottom. Looks like we got a lot of leakage there, a little bit of liquids leaking down, and then of course some of the leaves. We could go ahead and pick the leaves up the bottom and put it back in on the top. I'm gonna go ahead and close that guy up, so that's good. Nothing's really fallen through yet. That's how it's supposed to work. And now we're gonna go ahead and lift this latch off and check out all the stuff on the inside. So the last round that I put in there was the leaves. And as you guys can see, the moisture in there are kind of breaking open some of the pine pellets, and that's just kind of expanding with the moisture, so that's giving a good carbon source. We kind of dig down in here, you'll see it's like, wow, man, I could feel my hands actually, it's kind of getting warm and down in here. Wow, man, it's getting really warm down here in that layer there. Woo, right there, it's nice and warm. A nice cold day. Anyways, we're gonna go ahead and get that back right. Once again, we're not turning this little handle as much as I want to. Oops, I turned it. All right. Maybe that's why some of the leaves dropped out the bottom. So here's our compost thermometer. Go ahead and get you guys a pretty good close-up on that. Okay, there you guys, check it out. As you guys can see, it's at a steady 90 degrees. So 90 degrees, if we look at the little scale on here, blue is cool, light blue is steady, yellow is active, orange is hot, and red is too hot, too hot, too hot again, girl. All right, so it's steady, so that means it's happening. Now, I would like it to probably be in the active, state, a little bit warmer than that, but I'm glad it's steady because at least at 90 degrees, it's gonna happen faster than if it wasn't happening at all. All right, so as you guys can see, the Toter's composter is working pretty well. It's at 90 degrees. Now that doesn't get as near as hot as my Joras did on the 3rd or 4th day. They got a bit warmer, but it's a lot different process. I'm spinning the Jora so it aerates a little bit better, whereas on the Toter, it's just sitting there and it's actually still working, so that's definitely a good sign. Maybe if I got in there with a fork and turned it up a little bit, it'd start working a little bit better, and probably would. But I'm kind of lazy, I got a lot of stuff to do, and I can't, sit here forking my compost every day. I got other things to fork, you know what I mean? But I can't spin my drawers because that's a lot easier. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode learning more about the Toter continuous composter on wheels. I like it so far, and be sure to stay tuned and subscribe to my YouTube videos for updated videos on all my review and summary of all the different, 6 or 7 different composters I have in my compost alley here. Once again, my name is John Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. We'll see you next time, and remember, keep on composting. This is John Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. I have another exciting episode for you. Today we're going to do a really good episode, and this one is the easiest way to make compost